To me, I know we go a long way back. We work together. We've been friends for a long time. This is really a personal branding series which I'm running on my blog. As you know, my blog has been around since 2006, and I'm
Yeah.
giving back to the community in terms of helping people understand how to build their personal brands, especially during this time of the pandemic and
Mhm.
crisis which
Mhm.
uh, remains is obviously your personal brand.
Sure.
So, what we will do is, why don't you start by introducing yourself, a short summary about your background and what you do
Sure.
currently, and then
Sure.
we'll dive into the questions. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Anish. It's a great opportunity to reconnect after a long time, and this desire to reconnect with old colleagues and old friends along the corporate journey has actually been triggered by this crisis. You know how there's a saying that says, "Never let a crisis go to waste." Right. So I thought to myself, there's always this important element in our life, corporate life, which is networking. We always want to stay in touch, we want to always keep in touch, the intent is there, but you never go around actually executing that or actually keeping the the behavior of actually keeping in touch.
Mm.
Over the years, I've in the last 18 years I've been an immigrant. I left India in 2004, and around that time, I made a promise to myself that I'm leaving India physically, but I will always be a part of India, in the sense that I will always try and work for Indian brands, because that's my capability. My
Right.
core capability was building Indian brands on a global uh, landscape. So that to me was a career mission. And ever since I left, I wanted to keep in touch with most people. So I stayed in touch on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and mostly even long before LinkedIn took over, there was a very antiquated platform called Rise,
Right.
RYZ.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So that gives you a historical perspective of how networking actually started. So going back to your question, I've been following your work. I've been following your growth in the internal comms arena, as to how you've been advocating in your own unique way. I must applaud you, because I saw you from a ringside colleague's perspective of how you built that internal communications channel called SoftRec, and how you and I collaborated outside from Bombay to Bangalore, and I would pull content for you, and how we did those internal videos and stuff like that. So you found your niche, and I want to commend you for your tremendous
Thank you.
career trajectory. And it's a joy to reconnect and use this downtime to reconnect, share our personal stories, and catch up. So it's a double joy for me. In addition to sort of sharing my thoughts on personal branding, it's always a joy to reconnect with colleagues who are 2025. You didn't change much, though. I must state on the record that, but it's a great joy to be back in conversation with you.
Cool. So, Sunil, so again, I'll take notes while we go along because I'm sure there'll be lots of wisdom which you'll be sharing. So, in terms of your what is your definition of personal branding? And you have had a great journey as well. You authored books. You've been a speaker. You've done multiple kind of events and stuff like that. What is your definition? How would you define it?
See, again, I had the misfortune of going to a business school and have an MBA degree. So you learn a lot of these terms that become your verbal crutches, so to speak. In business, I feel many people either fall into one or two buckets. Either they become these extremely super specialized professionals, and they become very niche, or there
Mm,
are many who stay generalists
mm,
around a loose set of planets, so to speak.
mm,
In marketing, I chose the latter, where you have one or two core skills, but
mm,
there are a lot of allied fields that you are reasonably conversant on your own, can execute if need be, but at the same time you have the wherewithal to work with agencies, external, and so on. So very
mm,
early in my marketing journey, I wanted to define, and marketing teaches you almost intuitively how
mm,
to stay separate, or stay distinguished, or stay
mm,
differentiated relative to the competition. I mean, it's like, even in cricket parlance, which we Indians are so used to, you want to be seen as somebody in the, let's say in the T20 world. Let me give you an example of Rahul Dravid. Rahul Dravid had this amazing ability to keep reinventing himself, even in the T20 world, in the one-day international world, where people said, no, he's only a test cricketer, he's a blocker, and so on. But the way he added value to the one-day team was he kept wickets, right? That's a tremendous ability that he brought. And captains had this ability to use him as a wicket keeper, but also bring his core ability to, when quick wickets are lost, you expect Rahul to provide that support. So to translate that into a marketing parlance, I wanted to be that kind of a person who had this love for communications, which is written word, spoken word, which meant you're reasonably good at writing. You can conduct meetings, speak in small groups, moderate groups, run events as a moderator, and so on. So that communications element was taken care. And on top of that, you also had this functional ability to relate, do executive leadership communications. So how do you relate to these huge, larger than life leaders, the C-level, right? Whose egos are somewhat disproportionate to their designations. How do you write their thoughts and communicate in internal communications? How do you write those thoughts and get them published in external channels? It calls for a set of skill sets that really are a bit of a generalist. At the same time, you've got to be a general manager of sorts to manage these multiple disciplines. So very early, I decided that if anything, I would build my core capabilities around these 5 or 6 disciplines that are loosely called external communications. So that was my approach to personal branding. And I knew that many times marketers are seen as enablers or support leaders. Very rarely they are seen as people who understand business or have a very strong voice on business. So this ability to diverge the business world as well as manage the communications world becomes a very key part of a marketer. And because I have an MBA degree as well as a communications and journalism degree, I was able to bring those two together. And right from my early days in Acer India, where I was Acer's first ever communications manager, subsequently where we worked together in iFlex, later Oracle and TCS, and most recently at the CMO of a startup. My journey has always been, how do I connect all these dots together, build all these disciplines together, and be a leader that delivers not just communication elements, but also revenue support, lead generation, and support to the business, where people can, sales leaders and revenue leaders can come and say, hey, here's one guy who kind of gets it, who understands the business challenges as well as the communications challenges.
Got it. That's brilliant. And if I were to say, I mean, of course, I would qualify you as a personal brand in your own right. So if I were to ask you, how do you know it? So what are those signs which tell you that you are a personal brand?
I'm as you know, I feel very reticent about calling myself a brand, because you look around the business world, there are leaders who just accomplished exponentially bigger stuff than some of us. But I agree that if you want to be a successful marketer also, you need to position yourself as a brand. It's like a double-edged sword. It can cut both ways. And it can cut both ways because once you begin to think you are a brand, then it comes in the way of the brands that you're trying to build, right? A marketer is like the steward, a custodian, a guardian of the brands he is building. At the same time, he also needs to grow professionally. So it's almost like an oxymoron. How does a good marketer build other brands while personally rising in his own career growth? I mean, true modesty won't get us anywhere in that sense, right? You can't be a humble marketer, so to speak. That will be a sort of contradiction in terms, because marketing encompasses the definition of marketing itself means that you're speaking out there, connecting, engaging, which means you're going out of yourself and communicating. So if I were to just tell my story about a personal brand, it comes outside of marketing, which is my personal life journey, which is a rags to riches sort of a story. And so right from my early days, in fact, it started in 1999 in Bangalore when I was working with Acer. You know, when Times of India was doing a series on unsung heroes or people who kind of overcame tremendous odds type of a series. And that was the first time I ever actually spoke about my own personal struggles early in life and so on. And as when that story came out, the number of people who knew me professionally said, hey, listen, you need to somehow someday tell your story in the form of a book, because right here we are, you're always joking around, laughing, just teasing others, and in a happy place. No one knows the tough road you've taken to get here. You must tell your story. Only then I started really toying about this, because if you look around, I mean, every middle class achiever, if I might loosely use that term, is an inspirational story, because many of us come from hard economic situations. Many of us come from modest schools, and somehow we come into this very competitive corporate world, or even entrepreneurs. Some of the entrepreneurs that like the founder of Paytm, right? Is if you hear the founder of Paytm's story, what an remarkable rags to riches story. And if you see those stories and you compare yourself, you'll say, well, man, is such a big scale. But it's not the question of scale that differentiates our stories. It's what the personal journeys we've been through. So if I look back, I was able to then tell my story in the form of a book, as you know, which was endorsed. At that time, I was not even working in TCS. Then somebody in my circle took it to Ratan Tata's office, and he was gracious enough. I mean, that speaks volumes about him than about me. He, without even knowing who I was, and without even knowing that I don't even work in any of his group companies, he gave me an endorsement, which set me up very well, because the people read the book not for the book, but probably because, hey, if Ratan Tata endorsed this book, there must be something in it, right? So and slowly the book became a bestseller, and that set me up as a sort of inspirational writer, or that led me to speaking engagements. And again, my love for public speaking came in handy. As you know, we all used to MC events, we used to run panel discussions and stuff like that. So very few people love public speaking. As you may know, public speaking is the number one fear people face. Fear of death is actually number 5 or 6. So people rather be the dead body in the coffin than stand up and give a eulogy of about the person who died. So public speaking is a very scary endeavor, and I enjoyed public speaking right from my early days. So these two came together and set me up very well for being a marketer who can communicate verbally and in the written form. So my credibility got established because of some of the public speaking and the books that I had written. So these two added and helped my career growth. But I don't know if I can call myself a brand in that sense, right?
Well, yeah, I like the what you mentioned about how it's an oxymoron really, and the fact that and the fact that you leveraged your core skills which you knew intrinsically that you had, and you were able to bring that to the fore. So if I were to ask you, were there some things which you thought was it a conscious effort as you built your brand? So what does one do to consciously structure their personal brand? Is there something which you can share?
Lovely. So that's a great question. Yeah, it takes you back to what are your natural impulses. I must share you a couple of anecdotal examples to indicate how those natural impulses play out. I started electronics and communication engineering in a polytechnic, and my first job, if I had got it, would have been to do soldering, to assemble PCB boards onto an black and white and color televisions. Those were kind of my core skills that if I had to take that job forward, right? So, but Anish, I must tell you, I hated soldering. I hated PCBs. I hated electronics as a subject. My joy was in just going out and meeting people. So in that sense, I was more a people-oriented person than a person who can sit down and do that microelectronics, right? So that natural impulse was nowhere close to where I was being called to. So I rejected that, and I chose a calling in sales. Now, sales, I thrived for a few years because that's the only job that an undergraduate in India would get, right? So as I grew in sales, I discovered that anyway I studied electronics, I might as well sell technical products to bring the what you studied and what are the opportunities together. So I got into technical sales, instrumentation sales, and industrial sales. That gave me an opportunity to travel all over India. And when I talk to many of the NRIs and many of my friends in the US circles, I discovered that they have not seen many parts of India that I have seen. Right? I mean, for example, did you know that there are in addition to Bokaro having a great steel plant, that if you go further towards Dhanbad, there are coal mines and stuff. So very few people know the breadth and the length of India, and in all its splendors, in all its rich natural resources, the industrial. So that love for people and love for travel got accentuated by this technical sales. But as I was doing that, I discovered another element of mine, which is another creative side of mine. I loved advertising. Every time there were ads, I used to actually watch TV for the advertisements than for the program itself, right? So I used to enjoy that wordplay. And this, you see, this pursuit of natural impulses really helped me discover where I should land. So I quit technical sales, took a huge pay cut, and joined advertising again at the bottom of the ladder, right? Yeah. So let's say I spent 5 or 7 years in technical sales, and I'm going back to advertising. Those guys won't credit me for any technical sales. They're saying you're starting all over again. So I took a huge pay cut. But once I went at the bottom of the staircase and started my way up, it took off because very few advertising guys had the kind of grounding I had in industry, in my knowledge of how Indian industry works, right? So it's a very, I don't think it can be replicated, but this discovery of natural impulses helped me set myself up very distinguishedly in advertising. Because once I went into that, my ability to write good briefs, my ability to understand the consumer, my ability to understand what the businesses are trying to do, if there is a business to business, a B2B type of a product, got really burnished in the school of hard realities. So in advertising, I was able to take off, which subsequently led me to corporate communications. But really, the first ground rule of personal branding is, what are your natural impulses? Can you harvest them for your personal branding? If you go against the grain, let's say you are naturally a creative person, but you're getting into a role that requires a lot of structure, a lot of discipline, then there's a lot of inherent tension that will break you apart, and you will get suffocated.
Got it. That's a brilliant point. I like the analogies you drew and the personal stories that you shared. Now, if what are some of the attributes, like how do people, if people were to call out some of the key attributes of your personal brand, what would those be? So, have you kind of dwelt on that?
Sure. That's another very insightful question. See, if I were to prescribe what worked for me, this adherence to natural impulses is the first one. But the second one is also a set of strong core values. What are some values that drove me? One of the values that drove me was that I will never do sell or advertise any product that will harm others, which meant no smoking brand, no alcohol brand, or no gambling or any such brand. Because I know firsthand in the circles that I grew up what these brands can do to individuals and their families, because I came from that strata of society where if not taken care, these habits can physically hurt people, right? Smoking kills. We all put that disclaimer, but actually it's a very strong. So personally, I mean, I can't do anything about the industry lobby, but as an individual, I would never work on a brand. So when we were in advertising, every agency that hired me, I told them, if you happen to have any of these brands that I might need to work on, I will not work on. So a strong set of personal values are very important. That's the first thing. The second thing is being genuine. See, when we enter the corporate world, no, when we enter the professional sphere, sometimes people tend to play a lot of games. It's just to get ahead, just to play politics. Some of this in all my professional career, and some of this you've also seen it from the ringside view. I knew that if I play my game well, growth opportunities will happen. Sometimes they will be delayed, but sometimes it is, you can't keep a good man down, they say, right? Sooner or later you'll be proven if you keep doing the right thing. So in my case, if sometimes you don't get the promotions that you so well deserve because you're not playing the game that, let's say, the others want you to play, right? You don't and for example, I'm a teetotaler, right? But if many other friends are going into a bar or a pub and they're just having this, I would feel so out of place, so I would miss out on that. Maybe that sort of put me on a disadvantage. But I always thought to myself, and I say this a lot in my second book, Bound to Rise, I always looked at professional growth or journey as a marathon race, not a sprint. Too often, professionals are in a hurry to build a brand, but your brand is built over like a marathon. At the end of, in fact, I'll even extend it further. You'll be shocked to hear this. Your personal brand is what people say when they see you dead in the coffin. You see, if I have, let's say, I don't have, but theoretically, if I say I have $1 million in my bank account, nobody will stand in front of that on the day of my passing that, Sunil Robert, $1 million, man, right? I mean, it's not your net worth that determines your personal brand. It's what you've done for others, what you've stood for all your life, what are the core values that drove you, which I mentioned to earlier, the genuineness with which you did. And finally, here's what I always wanted to say. Even in the corporate world, there are many people, there are two schools of thought, right? One school of thought says, never trust anybody at work because you never know how they might end up hurting you. But I use the opposite paradigm, which is the extreme paradigm. Every few minutes that you spend with somebody, if you don't operate on a paradigm of trust where they trust you and you trust them, you are wasting it. You are living in a anxious, defensive mode. I would rather trust, get hurt, get betrayed, get cheated, get beaten, and live my life as joyfully as I did in the last 25 years than live in, defense and protect myself from being hurt and so on. So those core values, genuineness, authenticity, daringness to trust, were some of the key elements that drove my personal journey.
Great. Brilliant. And who, according to you, I mean, based on your journey of 25 years, I mean, again, not to talk about celebrities, but, a couple of names that come to your mind, who are people you really see as personal brands, and what are some of those characteristics that you admire about them?
I had a fortune of working with some of the finest leaders in our both in the companies that you and I worked with, and the many other companies. I found some really lovely examples of branding and what you should stand for, and those guys impacted me at the right time. Right. For example, I mentioned about Acer, where I was a Marcom head of Acer, the very first one they hired. They hired me, and I reported to a guy called Rajendran, who's from IIM Calcutta. When I heard about Rajendran and IIM Calcutta, those days we were young and you'd be intimidated by some of these fancy institutions, right? To my horror, Rajendran was even more humble than I was. Let me put it that way. If there's a paragon of humility that I've met in my professional journey, it would be Rajendran. When I met him, he just shattered all the stereotypes that I had about these high-flying, fancy business school guys, right? And it showed to me that, hey, you can be comfortable in your own skin and run the race at your own pace. So that's one example. And we continued on in our journeys. We met, Ravi Shankar Shanks, who was like this technically brilliant guy. We name was who even journalists and others, when they engaged with him, they would be just so bowled over. And we all know charismatic leaders like Rajesh Ukku and some of these guys. But the point is not how successful they were, but how they made you feel as individuals. I mean, even today, some of these leaders, we are in touch with them and we exchange greetings occasionally. I mean, we don't often talk, but the point is how these guys made you feel at that time really determines. And where I go with some of this is the say-do ratio in public and private. Public and private. Many of these leaders are different in private life versus they are in public forums and what in front of others. If that say-do ratio or the public-private persona, there's a huge gap, then it's not authentic leadership. I feel they'll be very successful. And we've seen many examples also, both in the Western world and in the Eastern world. They go to such a high pedestal, and once they get exposed, they are just knocked off the perch, right? The famous story of Rajat Gupta, who was like the poster child of McKinsey worldwide, and finally see how it ended in ignominy and shame. Now you might say, well, he's made his mistakes, he's coming back. Yeah, sure. Everybody has a chance for second chances. But all along, if you've been a paragon in integrity, and if your integrity takes a beating, then that's not a brand that you really stood for. So I would rather be seen as a guy who's an also ran, who's also a decent, but at the end of it all was one of the most genuine human beings that you would have ever met. That to me, see, that's the thing. In fact, I think it was Soren Kierkegaard who said, life is meant to be understood backwards and lived forwards. Meaning, what he said was, you define what your end legacy is, you define what your epitaph should say, you define what your eulogy should say, and then you live backwards. Then you're living. See, ultimately, I don't want to be known as the greatest marketer in the world, and neglected my family, neglected my community, neglected my church, neglected my inner circle, neglected everyone around me, and I just went in this mindless pursuit of success. So defining your legacy first and working backwards is very critical if you want to be seen as a successful, satisfying brand. So one is success, the other one is satisfaction. Right? How personally satisfied are you? Right? I mean, we can always say, I wish I could have done more, I wish I could have done more. But I would say, you could have done more, but did you do well enough in the light of the resources that you had? And we grew up with a lot of lack of resources. Now, today you're sitting on an information abundant economy, an information overload economy, which means you should be doing a lot more. If so, in the light of those, you compare yourself and say, I'm satisfied, I could do well. But at the same time, say, how do I continue to grow, evolve, learn, reorient myself? So it's almost like a contradiction in terms, but you push yourself at each level.
Brilliant. I mean, I really love these insights, and it's always great to learn this from you. In terms of personal, when you, like you mentioned about your personal journey and, the challenges you faced, the upbringing, from where you were and what you went through. So what are some of the challenges you faced initially when you were kind of trying to come up as a personal brand?
So one of the first things that I always wanted to do was become a brilliant communicator. And I come from Hyderabad, and till I was in 10th grade, I did not sort of speak English comfortably, or I was underconfident. I struggled with a lot of self-esteem issues. But from there to make this leapfrogging into a good marketer meant that I go through a lot of a valley of learning, so to speak, right? And that was a very difficult challenge. How do I write better? How do I speak better? And you make a lot of mistakes, right? For example, I used to get mixed up in words. You want to sound fancy, you want to impress the hell out of your audience, but you don't have the necessary grounding to use language for impact. So, for example, I would get mixed up between words like exotic and erotic, and esoteric. I mentioned this about this in my TED talk. So there were challenges. You didn't have access to books and libraries. So what do? You go to public libraries and you learn. You access from friends. You borrow. So those were some of these things. But the other skill area where I really struggled was to develop myself as a communicator, was to join a public speaking club called Young Orators Club. This was a very fancy place in Hyderabad, and the first 1 year I felt I did not belong there, because these guys were coming from all engineering schools, top Hyderabad public school kind of schools, and I was so out of depth, so out of league there. But I just persisted. I every week I would go get beaten, battered, bruised, because they not only let you speak, but they also evaluate you and rip you apart. This was not like the fancy be nice Toastmasters club kind of an environment. This was like ferocious evaluation. So I just went through the crucible. I learned. And then today I'm at a point, because of that solid learning in that club, I've developed a love for public speaking, and any little mastery, if I can claim, is because of that learning at all. And in my view, opportunities just come like that. Just 6 months ago, one of my professional setting, I had to MC an event which involved the CEO of our company. And so these are the kind of skills that stand you in good stead. I knew, and many people were getting intimidated because, the CEO is there, I can't do it. And then there were other leaders also. If you give this to a young person, the young person might fumble and fluster and make any mistakes. So a seasoned, experienced leader like you should do it. And so I ended up emceeing that entire event. So the skills that you have in your portfolio, you never know when they come in handy. But the more skills you have, the more arrows or tools you have in your toolkit, you'll be known to be an excellent personal brand.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I like the journey which you spoke about and how you overcome. I mean, the fact that you persisted. I like that word, because despite everything being thrown at you and you feeling out of place, but not many people would sit through and say, or they might just want to give up and say, I'm done with this, I'd rather do something else. But that's brilliant. If I were to ask you about your, what were some of the things that you gained and what are some of the things that you lost in this journey? Because of course, while you're doing this, there is an investment of time. Things might fall apart at the family side or the community side. So what are some of the things that you personally gained along the journey of personal brand building, and what are some things you lost?
I gained a lot more than I lost, actually, to be honest with you, Anish. For example, the ability to be seen as a global communicator, which was my earlier vision, right in my early days of my professional journey. The moment I quit sales, the moment I went into advertising, I knew that if I want to be the best in whatever field I chose, so that manic commitment for self-development started kicking in there. And I'm a person who lived by a very clear mission and values. My mission was to transform my world, through my communication skills. So a good brand or a good leader lives by a mission. That was very clear in my case. And because I lived by that, I also said it has to be global. I'll not just sit in Hyderabad, or I'll not just sit in Bombay or Bangalore and say I'm the best in the world. I said I'll travel and make an immigrant path for myself, which means that I'll go and work on Wall Street. I'll go and work in Silicon Valley. That was a dream. So I set that up as my mission statement. In pursuit of that, by God's grace, I was able to achieve it, and I'm very happy in terms of where I came here. I two things that I wanted to really do in addition to all this was write a book and give a TED talk or a TEDx talk, right? Those were some things that they took a while. I faced a lot of rejection, particularly in the TEDx talk thing, because if you're an immigrant, you miss out all the India opportunities. And because you're an immigrant, here you don't have access to all the opportunities that are here. So you're kind of caught in a no man's land if you're a first-time immigrant. Hopefully my children will have better platform because they are like native citizens here and they grew up in the school system here, so they have a better path. But I missed out on all the India opportunities that I could have had by virtue of being an immigrant. The second thing I lost, which is a personal side of things, which is a huge price in my view, and I hope many immigrants are also not paying, is by choosing professional success, I miss my India family, my parents, my sisters, my brother. That's a price you pay for being an immigrant, because every choice you make has an opportunity cost to it, right? So in that sense, that was the opportunity price I paid of being. I was a very loving older brother of 3 other siblings, very family intimate family. And so that was a big price that I paid in pursuit of this success. But the flip side is, you just comfort yourself saying, your family always wants you to thrive, whatever it takes. And so in that sense, it's almost like a self-consoling paradigm that I embraced. But that was what I missed. But another thing that I sometimes feel I may have missed out is just watching the growth of India from being on the sidelines. Once you're so far away because of the time zones, no matter how actively you want to follow or be engaged, you're still far away. I try to make as many trips to India as possible, professionally or personally, but those are some of the elements that I missed. But what I gained are the platform and the credibility that that you want to be seen as one of the best in the business, seen as a leader with a different style of management, different style of connecting with people, a very people-oriented leader. Those kind of things that I set as pursuits, I was able to pursue and gain, Anish.
Brilliant, brilliant. If you were to advise someone who's either a graduate or starting out in their first job, or even in college, so what is that? What is the first step he or she must take to build a personal brand?
Yeah, let me share with you a funny story about how I got into a bit of a fight with my teenage son. And how teenagers, they're just in their own world, plugged in and all that. So one day I got very frustrated with my son and I said, so what do you really stand for, Aman? Tell me, what do you really stand for? And he looked at me and said, liberty, equality, and justice. He said it to kind of dilute the anger and diffuse my situation. But that really was the first thing that I really want every young person to ask. What do they stand for, right? What do they believe in? What is it that they really stand for? Like the values that I referred to in the earlier part of our interview. If you stand for social justice, if you stand for if you cannot choose a career that is so far away from those areas of influence that you want to. So today, India is just bristling with opportunities, right? If somebody wants to make a career in journalism, they can joyfully go and do it, because in the time when we wanted to become journalists, and in fact, my mother was very vehement about my desire to join and become a journalist, because she said there's not enough money in journalism those days, right? Yeah. So today the world is opened up with a lot more opportunities, and you can make a decent living while still pursuing your. So the second thing that I want to ask you people is, what is your raison d'être? What is the reason for your being? What is if you believe in a God, why did God create you? If you don't believe in a God, why are you here? I mean, any answer to that powerful question, what is the single largest impact you want to leave on the planet around you, is a clue to who you are as a personal brand. In fact, I was just, it's hard to teach our own children. It's hard to teach our own kids. You can go and be the world's best motivational speaker. But I was just chatting with my son and saying, what are some of the strengths that the parents and inner circle of friends are validating in you that can give you a pointer to what your personal brand will be when you graduate out of college? Let's say if everybody is saying you're a good problem solver, you're a very analytical person, you have to find a job that will give you a free expression of those skills. You see, it goes back to my own earlier struggle, right? You learn fancy words to impress when you're young. But once you grow old and you mature and you realize that it's not, people don't care about how you impress, it's all about express. How do you express your thoughts? Then you look at language and words as a completely different set of tools. Every word becomes a tool. You use the right word in the right occasion with the right tone, right tenor. You start falling in love with language and you start using language to express, not impress. So those are 2 or 3 things that I would say. What's your raison d'etre that you want to accomplish? What are your strengths that people around you are validating? Let's say right in college, people started saying, you're a great event organizer. Within 2 days, you put together a nice event. So maybe your future is in event organizing and management, detailing and stuff. So those are pointers. So one starts with a core purpose and the other starts with external validation of people around you.
Got it. Excellent. I think this is definitely great advice for a lot of people out there. If you were to look back on your career and your life, is there one thing that you would like to change, and what would you do differently about your personal brand?
Thank you. I have to be honest with you. In the early part of my career, let's say between the time I was 23, 22 to the time, let's say I was 30, about thereabouts, I was very restless and super energetic and almost like impatient. If there's any one thing that I would, and this whole escalation business in the corporate world, right? If I come to you and you don't pay attention to me, what does the corporate world do typically? They copy your boss and they copy the boss's boss and they copy the boss's boss's boss. And then this chain of escalation goes. If there's one thing that I've learned is the moment you escalated somebody, you've lost that person as a trustworthy friend. You need to get your job done in such a way that without escalating, without making the other person feel embarrassed in front of their bosses and their teams, can you get the job done? It's a very tough challenge because everybody has their own priorities. Your priority may not be their priority, so they may not respond in the same pace and same responsiveness you are expecting them to. So how do you get stuff done? These days, I'm trying my best to be persuasive outside of that email chain and getting it done, not being impatient, trying to put myself in their shoes. I've become a lot more empathetic subsequently than in the earlier days where I would escalate at the drop of a hat, right? So those are some of the things, that impatience that today when I look back, some of these guys are still my LinkedIn connections. And when I think of those incidents, I hang my head in shame and say, I shouldn't have done that. But, you make those mistakes and only then you learn out of that, right? So today it'll literally take me a life or death situation to escalate against a colleague or against I try to get the job done without that.
No, I mean, I always knew you as, that's one of the, characteristics which I admired was your ability to, persuade people, influence them, and the network which you had. I can tell you what it must be right now. If you had the network then, incredible, the connections you had, the ability to, move the needle on so many things was mind blowing. So, I personally learned a lot in those days.
In fact, I'm glad you mentioned the word network because, see, this whole business of networking and LinkedIn, people have a very wrong notion about LinkedIn. You cannot build a network and ask people for a job or a favor when you need it. You build a network long before you need it. In fact, in the Indian setting, they say you dig a well before you're thirsty.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? So you prime the pump, you dig a well, whatever metaphor you use, whether it's a priming the pump or well net, or even if the electrical network, you wire the network long before, and the network will support you when you need it. And one more thing, what people forget is just because you have a connection on LinkedIn doesn't mean that it's a network. That's a connection. It's not part of your node. Nodes and networks. We study electronics, right? Your nodes are your influence. The person who feel that you have connected to that person and you've given something to them, either on the network or outside the network, is a live node. It'll be of some use to you. You cannot say, I have 5,000 connections on LinkedIn, therefore my network is big. No, they are just connection. I feel influence or your ability to get something out of that network comes is how often do you give into that network? How often do you sort of share, care, give, and all social networking or what even your personal networking is based on reciprocity. If you are a
Absolutely.
person who's a giver, it will come back to you. If you're a person who's a taker, pretty soon you'll run out of your chance to take any further, right? So again, young people, particularly your young readers, should know is that you can build a network, but you have to invest in your network by giving yourself your talents, your time, your voluntary effort, what you do. So yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that, Anish.
Right. So if I were to ask you in a sentence to kind of define your personal branding mantra, what would that be?
My personal branding mantra is be yourself ruthlessly and honestly.
Okay.
If you speak to the people in my inner circle versus people whom I barely met, I would like to think, and again I could be marginally wrong, not absolutely wrong, is that they'll say, here's a guy who's pretty much genuine in all the spheres that we've seen him. Right? So your ability to have very little deviation between what you claim to be versus who you are. Your ability to just stay to your core and be who you are. So even in my desire to go back to India and do a lot of stuff and help is actually from that thing. I mean, I can easily sit up and say, for example, when we go to India, we just go for a month or we go for a few days. But of that, I use a major portion of my time to go and do some voluntary work, do motivational speaking, do stuff to help others, inspire others, talk to college kids, talk to business school kids. Is just to do that. Even when in the middle of the lockdown, when I went recently to my alma mater, Osmania University Journalism Department, the professor organized a small class for 50 people, because in the early stages, you must remember, they said you shouldn't have gatherings of more than 50 people. Right? So even around that time, they organized a small class on international public relations, and I was able to share my experiences. Now you might say, if you're in Hyderabad only for 2 days, you spend half a day in the campus. That's why I don't get anything out of it other than just meeting my old professor, the set of people who taught me, and they're still there, and so on. But the joy that you see in young students, and I know you do this a lot as well, is immeasurable, and you feel okay, you've given back something from what you've taken from the corporate world.
Absolutely. So now with this pandemic going on and all these crises taking place now, how should personal brands, think about engaging? Should they pause what they're doing? Should they revisit their approach? Because you can't suddenly be salesy in these kind of situations.
Correct.
So what's your recommendation?
In fact, I did a panel with a couple of folks in Bangalore earlier, just in the middle of this pandemic. You cannot change your persona and drop one mask and put on one mask and become this caring, concerned, compassionate leader overnight, right? So this is what so if you are a ruthless, get success at any cost type of a personal brand, you cannot overnight drop your core and be something else. So those kind of leaders have to put it on pause. But those compassionate leaders who were all along doing nice stuff, those guys can go full speed on overboard, because earlier people used to say, hey, these guys are wasting time changing the world. Suddenly they are in the limelight, and they are the ones that are taking the heavy lifting and supporting the communities around. So those are the guys who keep doing what they're doing, and they're not building their brands. They're doing what they've always been doing. In the process, their brand is building. Right? So if you're a person who's always been doing this community building and that comes very naturally to you, you keep amplifying your effort. In fact, more and more people will come alongside you and lift you up and build your brand. So this is a great time to ramp up your own efforts, not to glorify yourself, but to do a lot of good out there to the social causes that you espouse.
Got it. Excellent. And I think you partially kind of answered this, but your advice for youngsters, Gen Z and others, so what can I know you mentioned that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, but what other advice do you have? Any last thoughts on that?
Sure. So my take is many of these guys almost have no filters in the way they communicate,
Mm,
particularly the younger ones, and they have to realize that social media is not the reality that they live in, right? So
mm,
the ability to live in a social media bubble is
mm,
completely something that these guys have to get out of.
mm,
So if they want to change the world, they have to get off social media first, and
mm,
then whatever they do can come and translate itself into whatever likes, uh, hearts and whatever on Insta or whatever. So the point is for young people to
mm,
really get a sense of who they are. They have to understand the power of influence, the power of influencers, and how they are sort of following all the influences that they like in,
mm,
and what are those guys doing. So in
mm,
fact the battles of the future will be fought on social media. So in
mm,
that sense they are very well positioned to understand social media, but they also need to realize that social media is only one part of life. The other part of life is the harsh reality of life. So try and
mm.
go and engage. In fact, this pandemic did a lot of good for these guys. Now they are forced to deal with people like parents, talk to the parents, and then suddenly it's like, oh, my parents seem nice, right? Some might say, or some people might say, oh, my parents are getting on my nerves, or whatever, right? Depending on how they see it. But this ability to go back to those human connections is the first and possibly the only advice I'll have for them.
Brilliant. I think those are all the questions I had. This really been a brilliant interview. I mean, I loved all the answers you gave. I think there's so much people can learn. So thank you for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it. I know you're doing this in the lockdown time when you have multiple meetings running. So thank you so much again.
No, it's always a pleasure chatting, and I just want to thank you and applaud you for all the good that you've been doing. I keep even today talking about your save wear a helmet, save a life campaign that so you brilliantly single-handedly engineered and took it to a certain scale, and you were able to walk into almost in some cases competitors' offices only because of the cause that you just completely single-handedly led, built a community around it. And I'm really proud of your work as well, Anish, and great chatting with you. Um, Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll just stop the recording right now.